Hello, this is your host, Christina from Savvy Radio. Thank you for joining us for our Heartbeat of the World video series, where we're bringing you some of the top experts around the globe to talk about some of the greatest challenges facing our country and the world. Our guest today is Abby Johnson, former Planned Parenthood leader on the truth about abortion. In 2009, Abby Johnson quit her job at Planned Parenthood. That simple act became a national news story because Abby was the director of Planned Parenthood Clinic in Texas, who, after participating in an actual abortion procedure for the first time, walked down the street to join Coalition for Life. Today, Abby shares her story from both sides of this controversial issue of abortion. Find out more about Abby and her work at abbyjohnson.org. Hi, Abby. Welcome to our Savvy Business Radio Heartbeat of the World video series. Thank you so much for coming out today.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
Well, it's a blessing to have you. I read your book cover to cover, and I thought it was very important to have you come on out and talk. This series is dealing with some really huge issues going on around our country, and one contentious one is the whole talk about abortion, which you're either really for or really against, and it's not a black and white issue, as you've come to realize through your story and living it. So before we go to all that, share a little bit with our audience just about what brought you the whole working as a against abortion advocate, and how that even transformed for you, because you actually started on the other side of the fence.
Right. So I worked for Planned Parenthood for 8 years. I got involved with them in college and didn't honestly know much about them, just sort of listened to their talking points and believed what they told me. And so I got involved and began working with them and sort of rose up in the organization and eventually ended up running a clinic for the third largest Planned Parenthood affiliate in the country, and left in 2009 after several things had happened. One was I was instructed that we were going to double our abortion quota, so the amount of abortions that we were required to sell to women. But ultimately I left after witnessing a live ultrasound guided abortion procedure where I saw a 13-week-old baby fighting and struggling for his life. And I knew then that there was humanity in the womb, that there was life in the womb. And if those two things were true, then I was on the wrong side of this issue and I needed to defend those lives as well. So ended up leaving and have been speaking out ever since and trying to really expose what's taking place inside of the abortion industry, that this is an industry, that abortion is a product that they are selling, but then also really trying to provide help and healing to women who have made the decision to have an abortion as well.
Wow. It's such important work, because I went to Planned Parenthood many years ago for with my sister when she got pregnant. And, they tell us, that we've got a whole bunch of options for you for birth protection and stuff like that, birth control and HIV testing and all this. And so I said, oh, that sounds great. Now, the only thing at that point in time that bothered me a little bit about Planned Parenthood is I said, I felt like I should be there. And they kind of didn't want me in the room, thinking that maybe my presence would kind of influence her. So, I mean, what do you say to people who are like having kids that might get pregnant? Like, how do you even deal with that?
Well, I mean, I think that, you're right. Absolutely. Planned Parenthood does not want anyone who might influence them into not making an abortion decision, because that's how they make their money. And so for them, it's not about being really pro-choice. I mean, the whole idea that someone is pro-choice is really a myth, because women don't walk into abortion clinics saying, oh, I'm so excited to exercise my right to choose today. They walk into abortion clinics because they feel like they have no other choice. And the abortion industry knows that, and they exploit that. And they can be very coercive in the way that they talk to women, very manipulative, because it is a product that they're selling. And there is a quota that they have to meet every month for the amount of abortions that they're providing. So yeah, I mean, I wish that we didn't have an issue of teen pregnancy or, young women getting pregnant. And a lot of times people will say, well, this is, a young girl shouldn't have to, be a parent and all of this. And that is an unfortunate situation many times. But the bottom line is that we don't kill for convenience. And that's essentially what we're telling these young girls is acceptable. Yeah. And it is scarring their conscience at a very young age. And, there are other options besides abortion. If a young woman was really not ready to be a parent, adoption is available to her. And I say this as an adoptive parent, the problem right now in our country, in particular in the United States, is that we have so many adoptive families, but not enough babies. And
really?
So,
wow, I didn't know that.
Thousands of people, couples on lists waiting to adopt children, and there's no babies. In fact, here in Texas, an adoption agency just recently closed because they had so many couples and no babies to place. And so that is a viable option for many young women. But honestly, I think a lot of times young women just need to hear that they can do it, that they can be successful, that they can reach their goals, that they don't have to give up on their education. They don't have to give up on their career path because they have a child. And I think that, I think about the 8 years that I was at Planned Parenthood and really following sort of this secular brand of feminism. We were there to say that we empowered women and we liberated women, but I can't think of one time in my entire 8 years at Planned Parenthood where I actually did that, where I actually empowered a woman. I remember, women would come in and they would say, well, I'm a single parent. I'm going to be a single parent. My boyfriend ran out on me. And our answer was, oh, that would be really hard. And you certainly can't do that on your own. You certainly don't want to be a single parent. So let's just get you scheduled for an abortion. Or a young woman would come in and say, I'm in college and I want to finish my education. And we would say, oh yeah, there's just no way you're strong enough to do that. So, let's just give you an abortion today. And what we were doing was exploiting the weakness in these women. And we were not bolstering them. We were not providing them any sort of strength or any sort of healthy option.
Your book opened my eyes, because I really thought it was an option that you could go in there, choose the abortion or choose to keep it or choose to give it up for adoption. I wasn't the one going behind the doors for them to say, here are your options and how they talk to you. But you really opened my eyes on how they operate there. And I actually didn't see them as an abortion clinic so much as just a place where they offer feminine, options, as it were. And so, it was great to actually be educated on that. And also to realize that there is option. I did not know that there's so many families waiting for babies. And so now if people had the baby and gave them up for adoption, how many more families would be blessed by having a child that they wouldn't otherwise have?
Well, an adoption is not what it was 30, 40 years ago. We adopted a child and here in the United States, and we have a very open relationship with his mother. She sees him every few months. We talk, we text almost every day. I send her pictures, weekly. And it's really more like almost like a co-parenting situation. But he lives with us, and because we're able to provide in a way that she was not able to. So I think that there is like this stigma around adoption, and I hear a lot of people, even pro-life people, that say, I don't know how anybody could just give their baby up. And 50 years ago, that was what they were doing. They were going to these maternity homes. They were having their babies in secret. But today, that's not the case. And we need to do what we can to really reduce adoption stigma, and to really honor these women, these birth mothers who are making this very courageous, but also it is a very difficult decision and a very difficult path to go down. But it is very different. Adoption is very different today than it was many years ago.
Wow, that's cool to know. Do you think it makes it easier on everyone that it's open like this, open adoption?
Yeah, because our son Jude, he's not going to have to grow up with questions, like,
did my mom love me?
And why couldn't she raise me? And I mean, he just knows her. He will grow up knowing that he's adopted. He'll grow up knowing his story. He'll grow up knowing his mom. And I think that helps with, feelings of potential abandonment with adoptive children. And it helps them know their history. It helps them know where they came from and who they're a part of. And I think that's really the most healthy dynamic that you can have in adoption. And, we're blessed by the strength of his birth mother. And really, I tell people, when you adopt a child, you're not just adopting that child, you're adopting his mother as well. And, she has really become part of our family. And it's just really been a beautiful story.
Wow, I love this. I'm glad this exists. But I'd like to touch on something else I've noticed with a lot of my friends who've gone through abortion. I didn't realize it was even an issue because I haven't had one. But I went to a spiritual retreat a number of years ago, and they asked us at one point to come up to the front and talk about a sin you've never been able to forgive yourself for. 80% of the women that went up to the front could not forgive themselves for abortion they had done earlier. And it wasn't because like some Christian faith or some other faith made them feel guilty for it. It's because deep down in their soul, they just felt wrecked about it. And they couldn't forgive themselves. What do you tell women out there who might have gone through it, who are having difficulty forgiving themselves? Because, you have to be able to move on and carry on and live a good life so you can help others. How do you forgive yourself? How do you start that process?
Well, I think, one of the reasons that women do feel this sort of shame is because we're not talking about it openly in our churches. Almost 70% of women who have abortions identify as Christian. And I think our silence is driving them into the clinics. And I think our silence is keeping them in a place of shame and guilt. And it's interesting because I go to many different churches just as I'm speaking, and I hear them talk about many different sins, that plague our society. And it's very, very rare that I hear about abortion. And it's even rarer that I hear a call to healing for women and men in the congregation who have experienced this. And I think that's essentially telling these people that their sin is too big because we're not talking about it. And as Christians, we know that's not true. And sort of a funny story, when I left Planned Parenthood, I was, I was struggling, of course, with a lot of guilt and shame over what I had participated in. And I myself have had 2 abortions as well. And I was watching that movie Kung Fu Panda with my daughter. And there's this like wise old turtle in the movie, and he's talking to this other guy, and he says, "Do you know why today is called the present? Because it's a gift." Oh. And that, in that silly movie, I was like, yeah, I have to make a choice every day when I wake up, as a Christian, as a sinner, I have to make a choice. Am I going to live in my past, something that I cannot control, or am I going to live today in the present, this gift that God has given me? and I have to make that decision every day. And you know, some days things happen and it throws me back into that past, that past life, into those past sins. And I realize that that's where Satan lives. Satan lives in our past. And honestly, he sort of lives in our future as well, because we can't control either one of those places. And, you know, we wake up and God's here and he's present and he wants us to accept this gift that he's given us and just to be right there with him every day.
I love that. And that's what came from me, that there's no sin too big that Jesus cannot forgive you for. I mean, he died on the cross for everyone. And we all sin in different ways. I've done awful things I regret, I wouldn't want to talk about and tell people from the hills. But there are certain things that you hold inside of yourself that if you can't forgive yourself for, we have to have an open space. And what better place than the church, the community of people that worship God together, where you can feel open and without judgment, be able to say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with and I'm having trouble forgiving myself for. Will you pray with me on this?
Yeah. And, you know, I went to a church one time. I was speaking there and the pastor stood up and he started talking about an abortion that he had been involved in with his girlfriend many, many years ago, when they had just gotten out of high school. And I thought, you know what, that's the reality that congregations need to hear. That even the leaders in your church are sinners. They're flawed. And it may not be abortion, but it may be something else. And we just have to be real about our imperfections and about our flaws. And we have to be real with each other. And, you know, we can't act like we've led this sinless lifestyle, because that's just not possible. But I think the more honest we are with each other about our past, I think the better everyone is. And it shows people that, you know, that past that they maybe have lived in can be a message for the glory of God.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every day you can take another choice and make another choice. It's never over until it's over and you leave this planet. Yeah. Now, another thing I'd like to touch on, because I know a lot of people listening to my show were probably supporters of abortion and think, hey, I mean, it's every woman's body. They should be able to choose what they want to do with their body. And I myself, growing up with a mom who was Catholic and a dad that was Lutheran, both of them were not for abortion. So I just never had to face whether to get one or not. But maybe if I had, I would have been, topsy-turvy, like, what do I do? I'm in this situation. What do you tell to someone that's always been for it and say, hey, this is my body. I should be able to do with it as I please?
Well, you know, I think that as science advances, we are really starting to see those typical and traditional pro-choice arguments crumble. Because now we know scientifically, without a doubt, that at the moment of conception, that there is a human being there. This is not a cat or a dog, but it is a human being. And there are only two stages of being. There is life and there is death. And if this human being is growing and cells are replicating, then this human being is alive. That would be the scientific definition of life. And so any disruption in that continuum of a lifespan equals death. And so, you know, we talk about a woman's body, but we're not actually talking about a woman's body here. We're talking about an individual and unique human being that's inside of her body. And there's people that say, well, you know, but it's dependent on the mother. Well, I have 5 children, and I can tell you that all 5 of my children were very dependent on me in their beginning of life after they were born. That doesn't mean that they're suddenly not valuable or that they're not human beings or they're not human persons. And so I think we have to really we have to step outside of the traditional arguments on both sides. And we have to say, look, let's just look at the facts here. Let's look at the science here. Let's look at what it's telling us. And then let's make a decision. And look, if you believe that ending a life throughout any time in that lifespan, whether it's in the womb or out of the womb, is okay, then you have to acknowledge that you're okay with killing another human person. And if that's you, if that's how you feel, then that's how you feel, right? I'm not here to change your mind on that. But I think that we do have to recognize what we're actually doing and what abortion is actually doing to that individual human being inside of a woman's body.
Yeah, it's a very important conversation. And what I found interesting is the conversations you had and were taught at Planned Parenthood, that essentially a real abortion or a real baby is one that can survive outside of the womb. Once it's, needs the body to take care of it, well, then it's not really a baby yet, because it needs to be inside the womb and you can eliminate it. And I thought that's interesting, because just recently someone was on my Facebook page and was complaining or arguing with someone that how dare you say it's a baby? Science says it's not a baby until it's outside the womb. I said, I didn't know that. So how has science come to understand that when the cells replicate that it's an actual baby? Because I'd love to bring this to the table if it ever.
Well, so there's different states of or different titles, right, for us throughout our lifespan. So, we might start out as an embryo and then move to a fetus and then an infant and an adolescent and, middle-aged and elderly. And so these are all titles for where we are in our lifespan. So it doesn't mean that if you're an embryo, then you're not a human being. And if you're elderly, you are. It's just different titles for our ages. And so I think that's important to recognize that. It doesn't mean that, well, these two titles mean that you're not a human being. No, these are titles for human beings throughout their lifespan. And it's interesting because medical technology and science is advancing. So, probably, 15 years ago, if a baby was born before 30 weeks in pregnancy, the baby would not survive. And now I just met a little boy, actually 2 nights ago, who was born at 23 weeks and is perfectly healthy and happy and a thriving little boy. He's like 9 now.
Wow.
And so as technology advances, as medical technology advances, we're going to see, and we have seen, the age of viability move up and up and up. And so it's got to be a little difficult to say, well, I believe that life begins at the point of viability, because viability keeps getting moved up. And so then you have to change your beliefs. You have to keep changing your beliefs over and over again. Well, I don't believe it's a baby till it's, 26 weeks. Well, okay. Well, now it's a baby at 24 weeks. Okay. Well, now it's a baby at 22 weeks. I mean, it's very inconsistent. And it takes a lot of mental gymnastics to sort of live in that thought process. It's just a lot easier to live consistent values, particularly on the issue of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's not touched on a lot, and I think it's very important, is what this does to the mother's body. And I know I talked to a number of people who have gone through abortion, and they said, it really wreaks havoc on your body. And years later, when they wanted to have children, sometimes it wasn't easy or possible. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's a very important issue that they're not filled in on, a lot of people who go to get abortions, what this could do to your own body.
Right. So the abortion industry is notorious for not giving proper informed consent before a surgical procedure takes place. There are serious consequences that can take place after having an abortion. This is a very invasive surgical procedure. And it's done very quickly. It's not done usually with any sort of visual guidance. So uterine perforation, where the doctor pokes a hole through the woman's uterus, is not uncommon. Infection, mainly because of unsterile instruments or because parts of of the fetus are left in the woman's body. That's not terribly uncommon. Scarring of the uterus can take place depending on how the procedure is performed. The physical side effects are one thing. The emotional side effects are even worse. So we have, women, there have been studies that have come out that say women who've had abortions are 6 times more likely to commit suicide. They're more likely to suffer with eating disorders, alcoholism, drug abuse, clinical depression. So, there are serious consequences, emotional and physical, that can come from having an abortion. And that's something that is very rarely talked about, and certainly not talked about inside the abortion clinics themselves.
And what I thought was safer was the morning after pill, and you had some stories in your book about that as well. And that's not necessarily always a safer option either. If someone thinks, let me just get the pill, I'm not that far along, I'm able to get the morning after pill. But that's not always safe for mothers either.
Well, the RU46 abortion pill actually is, there are far more risks involved with that than the surgical abortion. And yet that is what the abortion industry is continuing to push as their method of choice, because you don't have to actually have a doctor there in-house to do it. And so we're seeing those numbers go up nationwide. And women, there are more deaths that take place from the RU46 abortion pill than from the surgical abortion pill. And that's primarily because of infection. And the woman becomes septic.
Wow.
And she can die from it. So in Finland, there was a study. We don't have good numbers here in the United States just because of our medical reporting system. But in Finland, they actually did report on the complication rate for medication abortion. They found that the complication rate is as high as 20 to 25% for serious complications following the RU46 abortion pill. So I think women take it and they think, this is just going to be natural, like a period, and but it's far from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm so glad you were able to help inform our audience on this, and I don't want them to go away without finding out more about how to get help if they need it. You're one organization that helps people out there, and as well as helping people who used to work in abortion clinics who want to get out and feel like this lifestyle isn't for me. Share a little bit about that information. Sure.
So we started an organization about 4 years ago called And Then There Were None, to get abortion clinic workers out of the industry, get them into other lines of work, get them healing resources. We provide financial assistance. So really, we try to provide comprehensive help for those who want to leave. We've helped 340 workers leave the industry in the past 4 years. And people can find out more about what we do at abortionworker.com. All of our help is confidential and free. And so if anyone who was listening wanted to find out how they could leave, they could go to our website, abortionworker.com. And then, me personally, if you wanted to find out more about my work and how to get help if you're in an unplanned pregnancy, or whatever the case may be, how to get healing resources, you can go to my website, Abby Johnson, ABBY Johnson.org.
Fabulous. And always check out your book, Unplanned, where they can hear your whole story and get the full. Because you even mentioned afterward your full story working on the other side of the fence, as it were, and what that's all about, and really answer probably any question people could possibly have after this interview. And I just want to thank you again, Abby, for coming. It's been a great blessing having you share your journey and this great wisdom on Savvy Business Radio today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
After 5 years of creating exciting business content with amazing businesses from around the world, Savvy is now creating a new video series entitled Heartbeat of the World. This series will feature experts from around the globe. We will highlight and discuss some of the greatest challenges facing the U.S. and the world. Co-create with us and find out more at bit.ly/savvypatron.
Savvy Business Radio and runs in syndication on 8 AM/FM stations nationwide, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out in a bigger way, call 732-474-7375 or email Christina@savvybusinessradio.com.